Hello, welcome to my little trip down road testing memory lane. Q&A video today. Thanks for all your comments and questions as always. I'm on my travels. I'm in San Francisco. We're about to do the launch of the new Indian Scout. There's 5 new models and you can read all about those in MCM soon. See the video. Thanks to the power of jet lag, I'm up really early, so I thought I'd go for a walk and have a coffee and answer some of your questions. So, no two-stroke today. Without further ado, let's crack into the first one. So, first one is from XL Master 4779. Thanks for these great Q&A videos, no problem. Thanks. Based on your advice, I've booked into James Whittam School at Anglesey. Very nice. I have a skills question. At track days on my SV650, I'm having a lot of trouble trying the off-throttle turning after fast straights. As I brake at the corner approach, I'm being pushed forward onto the bars and I can't get it turned. I have to really concentrate to let the brake go. The front pops up and it turns nicely, but I've lost a lot of speed. Any advice? So kind of just to recap, the off-throttle turning is on track where all your turning into a corner is done with the throttle closed. Now, whether that means you're coasting into the corner or you're using the brakes, trail braking into the corner, it can be either of those two depending on your speed and how committed you want to be. But the key is to come off the throttle nice and early. And then with the throttle shut, the bike turns really easily. You're not kind of stressing the tyres by trying to power through the corner where the bike would just want to go wide. You've got plenty of ground clearance because there's no weight transfer pushing the back down. And because you turn so sweetly, the bike turns tighter and you can naturally get on the throttle harder out the corners. When you're braking hard into a corner, yes, you're going to be pushed right forward over the bars. I mean, if you brake really, really hard, most bikes will pull over a G under hard braking, and MotoGP bikes probably a lot more. So yeah, it is a really violent force, and it's something that you've got to get used to. But there are ways of mitigating that, and it kind of starts with the body position approaching the corner. So while you're not kind of under massive load on the bike down the straights where it's not real hard acceleration or hard braking, you're just kind of floating along. That's a good place to start getting into your body position. And if you can hang off before you start braking and have your thigh pushed right up against the fuel tank and your heels dug right into the heel plates, that's what's going to support you under hard braking. You can brake very, very hard and still have quite soft arms, and that gives you more control, and that gives you the ability to kind of start moving your hands, blipping the throttle if you need to, coming off the throttle, braking hard, that kind of thing. So kind of that braking force. So you're going down the straights, and it's one smooth movement from full throttle to the brakes, and you're letting the weight transfer from the rear to the front. And then you can start really squeezing the brakes. Once the weight is all transferred to the front, then you can brake as hard as you want. But it's one smooth transition. There shouldn't be any gap between throttle and brakes. And as you start to brake, then you can hang on with your lower half of your body, hung off, ready for the corner. And then as you start to bleed the brakes off, turn into the corner, then you can start throwing the top half of your body over the bike and kind of, head and shoulders in to meet the apex kind of thing. So yes, it's something that obviously if you're doing the Whittam school, they're going to teach you all of that, but hanging on under hard braking is much easier with the lower half of your body, and to do that you need to get to your body position way before you start braking, which really at most tracks means that you're always hung off one way or another. You're never actually sat in the middle of the bike. Even places like maybe Snetterton, you might be right in the middle of the bike because it's got long straights, or Silverstone, but most tracks you're either hung off one way or the other, anticipating the next corner. So, excuse me, keep looking down, I've got my questions on my phone. Great question, thank you very much. The next one is from Marco Butkovich 5414. Great videos, Mr. Neasy. No problem. Thank you 100 times, 1,000 times. I've learnt a lot from you and all the other great journalists from Fortnite, 44 Teeth and all the MCN staff. The question is, will electronics save you from high sides? Will it react so fast to save you? I hope you understand the question. Greetings from sunny Croatia. No, electronics don't stop you high siding. Electronics will kind of mitigate a high side in a way. So if you're going through a corner and you're hooked up, you've got the weight transferred onto the back tyre and you start to accelerate, electronics will kind of control the wheel slip or spin, and they're quite safe. If you are at full lean and you ask for a load of throttle, it's quite easy for the tyre to go sideways and for the bike not to catch it. Doesn't happen so much. If you have the electronics on absolutely full, it's probably impossible to crash on with high side, especially in the dry. You may be in the wet, but the trouble is if you've got the electronics on that restrictively, you're not going to be able to move forward anyway. The bike's just going to be so dull coming out of the corners, it just won't go anywhere. So you kind of need to have the electronics to a point where they're barely intruding, and at that point, if you're too ham-fisted on the throttle with too much lean, then you're going to high side. Obviously it's possible to high side if you hit gravel or something like that on the road, and it's also possible to high side off the throttle, and no electronics in the world will save you from a corner entry high side. I've had quite a few. I've broken my pelvis on one, smashed some bikes up on one. Yeah, they're nasty, and that's where you turn into a corner and the rear tyre, normally on racing tyres basically, not on road tyres, they always warm up much faster. But you'll turn into a corner, the rear's got no grip, starts to come round on you, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. It grips, flicks you up in the air and smashes you on the floor. So, I always think with electronics you should never ride in a different way to what you'd normally do. They're kind of there as a bit of a safety net if things go wrong. And if you're racing, they're there to save tyre wear, and also for someone at my level, kind of intermediate level when it comes to racing, I suppose, between club racing and professional racing, they fast track me getting to the limit quicker. So save me having to inch up to the limit of a tyre. I can start off on a Friday, say, with the electronics on really intrusively, get used to the feeling of the electronics coming on through all the corners, because sometimes you're weak on some corners and you don't set the electronics off even. And then as you've got used to the feeling of the electronics helping you, then you can turn them down and down and down and down, and you keep leaning on them, keep leaning on them, and you'll get to a point where you're not setting them off anymore because you're not brave enough. But yeah, electronics won't save you. But really good question. Next one is from Ghost Rider 20. Thanks for the question. I've a made to measure Dainese tracksuit. There's barely room for me and the undersuit. Where am I supposed to put an airbag? Well, good question. If you've already got clothing or leather suits or whatever that already fits you, it's very unlikely you can ever put an airbag underneath because there isn't a room. They say that you probably need a good 2, 3, 4 inches of wiggle room between the airbag and your leather suit or other garments to give the airbag a chance to kind of go off and do its job properly. If you try squeezing an airbag into a space that's too tight, it might do more damage than actually will stop. So unfortunately, if you want to wear an airbag with your lovely Dainese suit, you're going to have to get a bigger suit, unfortunately, one that's kind of airbag ready, and they've normally got more room in them. So good question, thank you very much. Next one is from Philo 8127, another riding gear one. Thanks for your question. Would like your thoughts on riding gear. Been riding for many decades and always wear appropriate boots, jackets, etc. The trend towards the urban look with shirts, hoodies and boots, which might look cool, but do they really offer any real world protection compared to a proper jacket and decent boots? Long time subscriber, looking forward to more content from you. Cheers. Oh, thanks very much. Thanks for subscribing. That's a really good question because, ultimately the best protection you can have on a motorcycle is what they're used for racing. So full leathers, full body armour, full airbag, proper armoured boots, gloves, the lot. So that is the ultimate. And if you ride around with that kind of gear on, you stand the best chance of being protected in an accident. So after that, it's a question of balancing the protection you want with comfort. I'm looking down, I've written some notes. I don't just throw these things together, you know. So yeah, you're looking at balancing your protection with comfort, like everyday comfort, the elements, how hot or cold you want to be when you're riding, and price. So you kind of got to think of all those things in one big hit. So really, you know, if you're going to pop down the shops, you don't want to wear full leathers and all the rest of it. You might just want to wear a jacket and jeans. So, you know, what do you choose? Well, if you're in Europe, all European motorcycle protective clothing has got to be CE rated, and you can see what the ratings are on the garment. Now, CE rating is quite it's not the most exciting subject in the world, and you know the experts will talk in terms of some very confusing CE numbers and standards and all the rest of it. But it is something worth looking into. And you know, recent MCN, if you have a look on MCN's webpage and search for CE ratings, there's a really good glossary of what's what. Fort9 did quite a provocative video recently about body armour, about really, you know, it was a provocative way of saying that body armour isn't really good enough to protect you from broken bones in its standard form. And then there was kind of another video that kind of discussed that John Milbank did on Bennett's, which was really interesting, with some experts on there. But really for me, I suppose my everyday riding is jacket and jeans, so I very rarely wear leathers on the road. And I suppose, you know, it's a calculated risk, isn't it? It's how much you're prepared to sort of accept that if you fall off you might get hurt. A lot of my kit is as good as it can be for, you know, jacket and jeans, and I wear an airbag all the time. But also I kind of cut the cloth to suit. I ride in a way where hopefully nothing's going to happen, but obviously accidents do, and you want to be protected. So you know, there's a lot of great kit out there now, that things that look like casual wear. I suppose that's where motorcycle kits move really in a really good direction over the last few years. You can have stuff you can wear out and about, but actually is quite protective, and that's really good. You know, stuff that's really protective is generally quite heavy and quite bulky, and it's not the kind of stuff you really want to wear out and about. But at the end of the day, you know, it's just like riding a bike. It's a personal choice. If you didn't want to get hurt, just stay at home on your sofa. Unfortunately, that's part and parcel of riding a bike. Accidents can happen, and you know, I guess in some ways that's what gives you the thrill as well. That's what gives you the excitement. So, but riding kit is getting a lot better. But it's worth doing your research. But great question. Thank you very much. So, next question is from Moto Daxa. Uneasy. I can think of a few examples of evidence of your feedback affecting the bike's attributes. Well, this is when I was saying about do manufacturers listen to our feedback, and I didn't think they did. Although it took 2 generations to fix, the MT09 handling quirks come to mind. Yep, that's true. And the new Fireblade super long gear ratios only took 1 update to calm down a bit. Yep. However, this got me thinking. I'm dying to know, have any manufacturers accidentally leaked information about a next generation bike at the current generation's launch, since they're so ahead of the curve? Surely it must have happened once over wine or cheese or something. No, they never. I suppose, you know, at launches, generally we're with a lot of PR people, and they're employed by the manufacturer to lay the launch on and, you know, handle all the logistics. And they won't know kind of the backstory of the bike that well, or they won't know what's coming next. They kind of know as much as we do, so there's never any secrets spilled there. Sometimes you sit down at dinner with manufacturers and you kind of, you know, prod and poke them, but you know, I guess they're so immersed in what they're doing and the bikes they've been developing, and you know, it's more than their job's worth, isn't it, to leak anything. So no one's, not even kind of a nod and a wink. They've all really kept it to themselves, even though, yeah, you know, the bike you're riding right now is one that they signed off years ago, and they're probably well on their way to creating a new version. But interesting one, thank you. And finally, from Moto Biker, thanks for your question. 2 questions, nice one, easy. Are there any bikes that got away, like the one you really wanted to ride but somehow missed out on? And do you ever get to ride any of the bikes you grew up with? If so, do you still enjoy riding them, or have modern bikes really changed the game? For what it's worth, I would love a go. I'd love to go on an RC30 or a Desmo Sedici, and I'm still riding. I love the sports bikes of my youth. Modern bikes have changed the game a little bit. I don't think necessarily modern bikes are the best bikes. I think manufacturers are producing new bikes now, you know, a lot of them because they have to, because of EU rules and all stuff like that. So there's a lot of new models, bikes that don't really need to change that much. I think a lot of older bikes are fantastic. I mean, to answer your question, I've written a list of bikes, my dream bikes that I would still like to ride. So, you know, they start with when I was a kid. I had a MB5, my first bike, and then an AR80, and anything above that just looked amazing. So I'd love to ride an RD125, a late 80s RD125, and an AR125, just because I used to look at those bikes like they were super bikes. And even now, with everything I ride, there's still something inside me where I look at those 2 bikes and think, wow, I just think, wow, how mad's that? And I'd like to ride an Aprilia RS250 2-stroke, which had the Suzuki RGV engine in it. I had a Suzuki. I've ridden the TZR and a KR1, but I've always wanted to ride an Aprilia RS250 2-stroke. I mean, they just look amazing. I've ridden a lot of my dream bikes. I've ridden RC30s, RC45s, NR750s, RC213 VSs, IW01s, Ducati SP3s, Ducati Superlight, MGS01, but there's a couple in there in that kind of generation of bikes I'd really love to have ridden. I'd love to have ridden an R7, the OW02, although it didn't actually make a lot of power as a road bike. It only made 100 bhp, unless you could de-restrict it with the race kit. And I would love to ride, a GSXR 750R, and that was the one that looked like a slingshot. So what my first GSXR that I owned, a GSXR 750J, but it was a homologation special. I know it was an RR, I think it was a 750RR. And that actually had the long stroke GSXR engine from the slab-sided bike, because it was more tunable, and it just looked special. And I think they were the ones that kind of were raced in World Superbikes. They would have been the ones that Witten would have raced the Durex Suzuki. And nowadays they fetch massive money. I think they're 35 something grand for one of those, but I'd absolutely love to ride one of those. And the recent misses, the recent ones I didn't get to ride, I'd really like to have ridden the Indian Challenger Baggers race bike. That'd have been something, wouldn't it? I mean, Emma Franklin got to ride that at Anglesey, did a really, really lovely job describing what it was like, and yeah, she had a lot of fun on it, and I'd love to have ridden that. I'd like to race one. And then the other bike that's kind of passed me by, I've got to ride all the Grand Prix bikes, but I'd really love to ride an NSR 500 V4. I mean, how incredible would that be? I've ridden the YZR 500 and RGV 500, but to ride an NSR would be, wow, that would be a dream come true. But there we go. That's it for this week's Q&A. We're going to be riding this Indian over the next couple of days, and then back home to do some more testing. So thanks very much for watching. Keep those questions and comments coming in, and please like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, and stay tuned for more like this coming soon.